Morena Koto, and welcome to this morning's hearing of submissions on the Freedom Camping Bylaw and Tararua District's Reserves Management Plan consultations. I'll just call for apologies, and we have none. And moving to the reports, Ali has put the report there with a recommendation and reasoning for there. Did you wish to make any comment before we hear from submitters, Brian? No. Okay. Does anyone have any questions before we get underway with our submitters? No. Okay. Right. So they've been here. We're not expecting the first submitter until 10:40. And I don't think we haven't got Colleen and Warren Cox here. Dennis Wakeley. Dennis, do you want to start early, or would you prefer to wait till your time? Okay, no, well, we can hear you now. That would be fantastic. Do you just want to come up to the table? And because we live stream these, if you just press the button at the front, everybody will be able to hear you in the room. Anybody listening online won't be able to hear you, that's all.
Push the button?
Yep.
Left or right? All good now, can you hear me? Good morning everybody, Marys and group of councillors. As you've heard, I'm Dennis Wakeley and I'm speaking on behalf of me, my family and other people that might be interested in the Mangata Reserve. There's a montage of pictures coming up. Now this place is a love of mine. It's not just a reserve, it's a passion. It's a district where I was brought up in as a child. I learned to swim in the swimming hole. We went there as children on the weekends and any other day played. It was a beautiful place to be. As you can see by the pictures, this place has gone to wreck and ruin. I took my young children out about 18 months ago. This is what we came up upon. There's muddy tracks, no tracks at all in some places. Oh, well, I know the place like the back of my hand, so I knew where all the tracks are. The picture shows a huge, great tree falling down over the boardwalk, which is probably 1.5 meters above swamp. The boardwalks are in a terrible state. There's netting on them, but the netting's rotted away, lifted up. It's an accident waiting to happen for young children. I won't take my grandies out there now because it's just too dangerous. The tracks that lead to the swimming hole, one of them going down from the big total tree is quite accessible, but others that branch off through the reserve itself, you could end up in no man's land. When you get down towards the swimming hole, there's a sort of a path of face you walk down with a rope that you can hang on to guide yourself down. I've been out there with a spade and cut steps into this papa face that you walk down to into the swimming hole. Me being having a gammy leg, and middle-aged people would struggle to get right down there. They'd look from the top and say, no, I can't go down there because there's no steps. So I took a spade out and cut steps into it so we could at least access the swimming hole, which is partly cut off because there's willow trees that have dropped off the bank into the river. You can get there, but it'll be a struggle, and we just don't bother going out there anymore because it's in such a state. You see the steps? They all need digging out. The riser on the steps is yay high, but all the bark and undergrowth and debris is banked up against these steps. It's an accident, as I say, waiting to happen. Whether this reserve is run by DOC, there's a council sign up there as you can see, or it's run by Horizons, DOC. If something's done or not done, how do we go about it? Do we consult iwi? I read up the magazine about the Mangata Reserve. It goes right back to, as I say, where I grew up. It was called the Hamilton Estate, and it was a huge farm. That homestead is still standing at Mangata. I had one of the Wallace boys come out with me. He knows, and this is where you brought up, Dennis. It was a drop-off point for the stock coming into Danny from the coast. But getting back to the reserve, yeah, I'd like something done. If it was noted, well, it means you'd do something about it. Those chaps down there, I'm one of them, are all in their 70s plus. It's a job that needs to be done and looked at. I'd like actually, it's a quarter hour out of town. Something was done with the Waihi Falls big time after Gabrielle. It's a little thing quarter an hour out of town. Why is not something being done to fix it up? You can see by the montage of pictures what it's like. I present my case, and that's it. Thank you, Marius, and thank you for listening, councillors. Any questions?
Thanks, Dennis. Does anyone have any questions for Dennis? Councillor Wards.
Thanks, Your Worship. Thanks, Dennis, for coming in. I know you're very passionate.
It is a passionate
about
one, Sharon,
this.
yes.
And I remember taking St Joseph's kids through there and got to eat my first hoo-hoo grub out of some of the foliage like this. So I know how special it is. Is there confusion over who is responsible for it? Like you said, the sign says TDC, but you've mentioned DOC.
Do DOC own it? Is it under the iwi to do something about it, or land? Not Lands and Survey, yeah, but
Well, the fact that it's mentioned in our reserve management plan, we've obviously got responsibility for it. So I really appreciate you coming in and saying it has to be sorted.
If something can be done, or has been done, out at the Waihi Falls, are magnificent now, wiped out by Gabrielle. This is just a simple task that would take a couple of weeks. I spoke to a chap who I know very well was going to go in there with wanted to go in there with his digger, but that calls mayhem. We all know who that is. I wouldn't let him through the gate, but that's all right. He came out with me and had a look around too, yeah. And he was just amazed at the state of the place that's in here. The tracks need, I could be a guy, the tracks need putting in, well they're in, but tidying up and not going to no man's land or going to the actual swimming hole itself.
It's just before I go to Councillor Wallace and Councillor Petty-Weber, can we just confirm Fontaine, that is Tararua District Council Reserve? Yeah, so it is us, not the Department of Conservation. Yeah. Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mayor Tracy. Okay, the question I ask over time, as you said, you've been going out there. How long do you think it's been going back, Dennis? Like, for, say, 1980, 1990?
Since it's been established? Or when was it established?
No, since the problems have started.
Oh, I would say since Gabrielle, and a little time before that, not years and years, but it's just slowly deteriorated over the last 5-10 years, yeah.
Well, that's 100% more.
Yeah.
10 years ago it started to go down?
Yeah, exactly.
And then Gabrielle come along and
knocked that tree down.
Didn't help things.
The boardwalks themselves, as you can see, a board's missing. Kids put their foot through the hole, there's a broken leg, or they fall over the side into the mud or whatever. You can't walk on some of the tracks because they're not there. You go around through mud and bush. Oh, hello, here's the track here, I can carry on.
Okay, thanks. I'm just trying to get that picture in my head. Like 10 years ago, you go out there and it was beautiful.
Yeah,
okay.
It's just of late that it's gone to wreck and ruin, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Councillor Petty-Weber.
Thank you, Mayor Tracy, and thank you, Dennis, for coming along. And I know you came along you came along to Community Board and presented about the reserve a while ago. It is a shame because we did have some money put aside for reserves, and then that got transferred to help with the town's water. So there hasn't been any funding available for reserves lately. So are you saying that your group would be interested in helping to restore the reserve?
I've spoken to them, but as I say, most of the men are all over 70. They have health problems and issues. And that. I don't think it's a job for them, no.
Yeah, okay.
No.
That's cool.
I'll tell the truth, Aaron, no, it's not a job for them. Whether pilot schemes like help clean up the domain and paint the domain railings and things like that come from the working groups that come from our prisons and such, do they still do Saturday morning jobs, or is that sort of thing go on, or does that not happen anymore?
It does. It gets harder to get hold of them for work, but I have seen them and they are contactable in the area.
Thanks, Tracy, yeah.
Yeah. I've got Councillor Johns and then Councillor Sutherland.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, thanks, Dennis. Can you tell me who built the boardwalks and created the tracks and put in the steps and so on?
I'm not sure. No, I'm not sure on that one. No, having left the homestead where I was brought up, we didn't go out or didn't have anything to do with the reserve for 20 or 30 years. But these tracks have been put in. I'm not sure by who or who has maintained them, if they've been maintained since. No.
I know with a number of reserves, they've been created, not the reserve being created, but the amenities and tracks and the like have often been created by interested locals that have got together and done it. And I'm just wondering whether that was the case with Magatoro. And it's quite possible councils never had anything to do with it. Would you?
It is quite possible, yes, yeah. Families that were brought up in the district now, a lot of them have moved on or, they are no longer living in the area. I think it would be hard to get an action group into gear to do something about it. And it shouldn't be up to them, it should be up to DOC Council or other interested groups that are, apart from, the people that live out there. Yeah. I'm very tempted to go out myself and start digging with a spade to get down the swimming hole and create some steps, but it shouldn't be up to me, no. As I say, my grandies and other people are suffering because this amenity is not up to scratch. It's an accident waiting to happen in some places here.
Thanks, Dennis. Councillor Sutherland.
Thanks, me, Tracy. Thanks for coming, Dennis. This reserve has a place that's been sort of close to my heart for many decades too. I remember taking all my children and grandchildren and a lot of my family. I used to teach them to snorkel and swim in there, and it was a marvellous place. So, but I didn't realise it's in the state now. But yeah, I spent a lot of time there over the decades. But just going back to Councillor Peters' comment, I recall I was involved with PEP gangs schemes many decades ago. That was when I worked for the county for a while, and the county, I think it was Dannevirke County was involved, not the Dannevirke Borough or the Tararua District Council, because I'm certain that we allocated PEP gangs doing work out there. So I think it was under Dannevirke County Council had a control, but it was in beautiful condition some decades ago, as you'll know, wasn't it, Dennis?
Yeah, I am.
And we used to spend, lots of groups would go out there, but it would be lovely to get a project together to do something about this. So I'm sure it merits some thinking going forward. It's a very worthy project because this has got a lot of history in our district. This one.
That's a quarter of an hour from town.
And it is. It's an amazingly easy place to get, and that was a beautiful swimming hole. Sad to see all the willows in that.
I went to swimming hole.
Yeah, so
I went to that school that was up there since moved on.
anyway, I'm with you on. It'd be lovely to do something about it somehow. So, yeah.
Thanks. Dennis, I've been out to Mangatoro Reserve some time ago because obviously one of our brochures we advertise, the largest tortoise tree. And, I was obviously, quite excited by that, but I wasn't when I found it. I did get lost. I came out on a road. I didn't get to the swimming hole, and there are parts of that that were slippery. And I wouldn't have wanted young people to go down there either. I'm pretty sure I came back and questioned some of the safety around that. But what we will do, and I thank you for your submission, but I will ask the Chief Executive or the Facilities Manager, will contact the Department of Corrections and see if we can't get somebody in there immediately, because I think the safety does need to be considered as a high priority.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's just a beautiful place, and it's not fit for purpose at the moment. Yeah, if you want to get there desperately, you can. You can go through the little gate and hang a left at the big oak tree, and it's 5 minutes that way, but to come in from the top triangle and down the steps,
Thank you.
all good.
Thanks, Dennis. So we don't have Colleen or Warren Cox here yet. Mark, would you like to come up a little bit early? You don't have to. Welcome, and it's nice to see you here. Just get you to pop your mic on as well. Might be a big crew watching at Pongaroa.
Back in the hot seat. Good morning, Your Worship, councillors and council staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here this morning. I am the first speaker of a raft that you will get from Pongaroa, because this is a matter that's particularly close to our hearts. So make sure your seats are upright, your tray tables folded away and seat belts on, because here we go. There are 250 individual parcels of land in Tararua designated as reserves. Pongaroa alone has 74 of these. That's virtually one for every resident of the village. Despite having a budget of over $1.9 million, Parks and Reserves clearly lack the resources to maintain more than a small fraction of them, mostly in populated areas, so the rest are either ignored or left to communities to look after as best that they can. In my opinion, it's vital for council under this new policy to acknowledge and primarily work with and support the people who are doing the work there in these areas already. Consider this: if all volunteer work was to cease, would you be able to cope with it? On partnership and management of reserves, yes, there is a central government directive to offer engagement to Maori, but surely not at the expense of everybody else. I personally find it upsetting that iwi have suddenly become your sole partner for the planning and management in reserves, ignoring the decades of work done and knowledge amassed by community groups. Iwi are business entities, and as such could reasonably expect to be paid for their involvement as consultants. I'd love to be paid for my input into this. I spent probably 12 hours at it, and at $50 an hour, I reckon I would be brilliant value for money. Would anyone like to tell me who I could send the account to? We hear a lot of talk and boasting in the media from iwi leaders about them being the guardians of the land, but I actually have seen no action on the ground to support this. And the fact that there are no submissions from or speakers here today on their behalf makes me question their interest in this partnership you're proposing. Honestly, I can't see anything being achieved by it except more talk, more cost, and less result. Regarding the reserve development and naming of reserves, it's nice to see council say that they will consult with communities over any development in or on a reserve. That consultation should first and foremost place greatest emphasis on the views of the community in the immediate area. They are the ones most knowledgeable, engaged, and likely to be affected by any changes. Existing names have cultural value. Add second names by all means, so long as the current one is preeminent. Current names are immediately recognised and provide emergency services instant identification of a location. I was honestly stunned when I read that if iwi gift a new name to a reserve, it will be adopted without hesitation or consultation. Would you afford me that same privilege? I've got a name I'd like to gift to one of our local reserves. These decisions must never be arbitrary or fail to consult and recognise local values, history and significance. I'm astonished that it could even be considered. Health and safety policies should deal first and foremost with identifying and mitigating actual hazards such as broken or damaged pathways, like a previous speaker was talking about, faulty equipment, fallen or dare I even say it, dangerous trees. Yet all that seems to be mentioned in this document is preventing vandalism, providing shade and making the spaces smoke-free. Nice aspirational aims, but they're certainly not an H&S issue. On culture, heritage and sustainability, we need to give equal weight to preserving our European settler heritage, as we do to our Maori one. It's no less important in telling the story of us as a district and as a people. Like Maori, European settlers built mostly using temporary materials, and few traces of that past remain today. So to have the rabbit weir at Waione, an 145-year-old relic, destroyed was disappointing. Unfortunately, TDC had omitted to include it in its list of historic structures, which eased the process for its removal. And although removal occurred after a consultation, that was very poorly circulated, and I, for one, found out nothing about it. As a result, please be vigilant about any future attempts to remove traces of our early European settlement in the district. As it is, I've lost a landmark on my way to town that's now just a sad hole in the river. Recent events in the 4 Mile Bush have caused quite a bit of angst within my community and certainly galvanised opinions. We've been told that we generate very few CRMs or other work requests because we just do stuff rather than burden council with it. And so we've been sort of left to our own devices. Well, in this case, that's gone a little bit awry in some ways. It should be a wake-up call, and it has been a wake-up call to some of us, for better communication and cooperation, especially regarding speed of responses to what are potentially life-threatening issues. Communication between regional and district council also needs to be addressed, as their differing viewpoints can create conflict. An adversarial approach, in our opinion, is really counterproductive to cooperation. Something positive we feel is required to fix this relationship. We'll do our bit. Hopefully council will do theirs as well. So how could council possibly streamline delivery and efficiency in the area of managing reserves? One possible solution could be to fund domain and community boards with a Parks and Reserves budget, like the old Mainstream Fund, with work being identified by both board and council. There'd be regular contact, financial accountability and expectations of service standards on both sides of the ledger. We know that locals can do much more per dollar spent than outside contractors. In conclusion, wouldn't it be marvellous to occasionally see council staff actively joining in the community working bees that we run? Yep, it means giving up some of your free time, but we've been doing it for decades. And that's the way that progress, friendships and true partnerships are formed, not by being the bloke with a big stick. Well, after that, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. Time to saddle up the unicorn and go home. Do you have any questions?
I do. For you, Mark, you talked about a structure that was removed. Which structure were you referring to?
The rabbit weir at Waione.
Right, okay. By the regional council.
Yes.
Okay. And did they work with the community on that?
I did not see any consultation come out on it. They did work with, I believe, the catchment board, but the catchment board did not circulate, as far as I'm aware, anything to the community.
Thanks for that, Mark. I'll have a look at that. Councillor Chase, then Councillor Woods and Councillor Johns.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Tracy. Thank you for your submission today. Do you have any issues with name places returning to their original names?
Interesting question. The names that they currently have, such as our reserve 4 Mile Bush, I was unaware that there was a previous name for that. In fact, there may not have been. I don't know. As I said, dual naming, I have absolutely no problem with. But the name that people recognise should be first, and any new name. Like the Pongaroa Domain. If we want to give it another name, it's already has a Maori name. Pongaroa Domain. What if we give it a European name, you know, is a second one? Can't see the point myself. I don't know whether that answers your question fully, but I have no problem with two names, but the one that's best known is the one that should stay where it is.
Thanks. Councillor Johns.
I realise council meetings are boring, but yeah.
No, thanks, Mark. Would it be fair to say that the demise of a lot of these domains and domains has mainly come about through two things? One, farm amalgamations and less people within rural areas, combined with greater mobility of modern generations, where they get in their car and they go to Foxton for the day rather than down to the river and the swimming hole in the river, that sort of thing. And that in the past, each of those little domains, like the Mangatoro and I think of Patterson's Bush at Kumaroa, and there are many others, Marima Domain and so on, were primarily looked after by the local communities. May well have had some input from councils, would have been county councils, I guess, at the time, but primarily they were looked after by the local communities. But those local communities have ebbed away and or are not all that concerned with those facilities now because they go elsewhere.
I can't speak for outside of the district, but in the case of the reserves that are in Pongaroa, that is not the case. They have always been looked after by locals. They still are looked after by locals. We have a domain board. We have the Way to Go. They put their own funding into maintaining the structures and things that are in there. They are extensively used by locals, and over summer, in particular, the 4 Mile Bush has a large resident population of motorhomes and camper vans. So, in our instance, while people have moved out of the district, yes, those that have come in have embraced the maintenance and the use of those facilities. Does that answer your question?
I guess, I was sort of talking generally, not specifically, and I realise in your case out there is probably a little different from many of the domains closer to towns and other parts of the district, e.g. Marima, Patterson's Bush, etc.
You are probably correct. There is a community spirit in towns is disintegrated. There is not any social tie. You have groups like, I assume the previous speaker was speaking on behalf of the Men's Shed or something like that, or Lions or something like that, that still attempt to do stuff and maintain the polite fiction that there is a community spirit in a town like Dannevirke or Pahiatua. It isn't. It's a whole little bunch of individual interest groups that are communities with it that don't really have any unity. So in a way you are correct, yes. The fragmentation of communities through amalgamation of people into larger spaces is in part responsible for it. I don't think the reserves that you've got here are used anywhere near on a per head basis compared to ours.
Thanks, Mark. Councillor Woods?
Your Worship, and thanks, Mark. Some of the questions and the points that I'd like to reflect on briefly here, I'm sure we'll hear similar points being made from the other submissions, but you made a point there on rebuilding the trust, and when I reflected on the plan and went through it in detail, it appeared to be largely silent on the roles and expectations of our community when it comes to maintaining and doing up and or improving these areas. So I'm curious, you've given us one profit of if council staff got involved in working bees, that's one way. Are there any other suggestions you might have when it comes to the criteria or the expectations that we should build into this plan for other communities? I mean, Lions look after Anzac Park, Pongaroa way to go, and the community look after 4 Mile Bush. This won't be the only example where we've got communities that hold their hand up. So I'm curious to understand, what do we need to make sure we've included in here that doesn't allow that vacuum to occur, and when things do go wrong, we all run around trying to find a law or a regulation that we can use. I'm just very mindful, I thought it was largely silent, our plan, on the role of a community. They talk about health and safety, they talk about furniture, they talk about a whole lot of stuff. And I'm curious to understand, other than council staff being involved in a working bee, have you got any other views, and or the community, any other views on what if we had to have a plan into the future, that the Pongaroa community could look at that and go, yep, where our roles and our expectations around doing this work in 4 Mile Bush. The other point you made was the dollars, which I've noted down, that if the responsibility money-wise was handed back to communities, that's perhaps another lever. Is there anything else, because your submission was very comprehensive in terms of analysing the specifics, but is there anything else that you thought the plan was largely silent on when it comes to a community approach?
When I thought about it and wrote it, I was thinking local, not global, more than anything else. But I believe that the way that the organisations and people out in Pongaroa have worked, basically, council's left us alone, that needs doing. We're not going to bother them, we're going to do it. And we did it. And Heather is going to give you a list of the things that we did, which will probably make your eyes poke out. Hand it to other organisations on a plate. We, invite them to engage. Invite people to take ownership of a reserve. Make it yours. Provide them funding to do rats and mice jobs. I'll mention it's a bit out of scope, but you drive along the road out our way and there's a bit of a branch or something sticking out onto the roadway. Oh yeah, no trouble, go around it and all the rest of it. Next time you go by, someone has been down there with a spray can and written a green number on it. And it's there sometimes until the paint's starting to fade before someone from council comes along and picks it up and throws it off the road. More often than not, one of us will pick it up and throw it away. You know, there's a lot of wastage in the system that if you empower locals to do it, give them the means, motive and opportunity, I think you'll find a lot of people will actually pick it up and run with it. Whereas it's too easy to sit back, oh, the council will do that, you know, the council can't do everything. Yeah, if you want the council to do everything, stand by for 100% rates increase. That's the reality of it. It's about time that people actually got to take back responsibility, not only for their actions, but also for the area that they live in.
Thanks, councillor Gilmore and then councillor Long.
Thanks very much, Mayor Tracy. Mark, thank you very much for taking the time to write a submission, but to come in and chat to us. I always find your perspective really interesting, and I like the straight talk and actually looking at some solutions. Councillor Wards has covered actually a good chunk of my questions, but I just want to add a little bit to that because very supportive of that, empowering local to be able to achieve things, especially if it's going to be an overall lower cost. However, some of this touches a little bit also on Councillor Johns's questions and comments before, where it seems to me that, not all reserves and domain boards are the same. So what Pongaroa has been able to achieve, and I absolutely acknowledge that and thank everyone for the years of work that has been done. Some other domain boards perhaps don't have the group of dedicated people that you have. So I guess that's leaving me thinking, because I thought the same as Councillor Wards about how the plan can look to groups that do want to take on responsibility, but be mindful that that may not cover every other group. What would be your, and this is from your submission, and I'll probably ask this to future submitters coming up as well, but in that respect, what would be your ideal outcome? So when we look at autonomy and partnership between the domain board, between interested locals and council, how would you like that to work and be written? Because actually how it's written is what we can make sure is done. And sorry, I know that's a big question, but we will be asked shortly, in some time after we've considered this, we will be presented back another document and be asked to approve that. And I would like to give some consideration to what might work well for yourself and for the Pongaroa community.
The answer to that's kind of in the deep end, isn't it? No, that's perfectly all right. When you talk about being presented with another document, how much input do you have into the initial drafting of these things? And is it, here it is, put a tick on it, or can you actually steer the contents of that from the beginning? So this is, all right, okay. Really, I would actually like to go away and think about what you said, because there's an awful lot to that. It's not just a simple, one-line chuck away. So I would decline to answer, but I am quite prepared to give it some serious thought and come back with, hopefully, an answer that fits your question and is fit for purpose.
And thank you, and I know I put you on the spot a bit with that, but I also do know that you do give careful consideration to any of these plans. My final request with that, and I'm very grateful for for your offer is please send that to all
It would.
councillors and the mayor, because I think it
And
would be helpful.
on that, it was actually not until I looked at the submissions yesterday online to see who was actually submitting that I saw that mine had turned into what I politely call squitty little font. I could not read it on the document that you people got given, and Councillor Ward's contacted me about that, and I sent her most of what I had left from it because I'd started chopping and changing it for an oral presentation. But I'll be mindful of that in future. I'll go back to just emailing them rather than using the online form.
Thanks, Mark, and if you could circulate that after you've given that a ponder, it would be appreciated. Councillor Long?
Through you, Mayor Tracy. Mark, not a question for you, just a comment. Congratulations and thank you for your submission. Just the comment about a community taking responsibility and actioning that and doing a job. That is something that is old school and it's continuing in Pongaroa. Good on you. And also because of the funding issue, that has to occur more in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Johns?
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. More of a statement initially, but you might like to comment on it, Mark. Originally, most of these domains weren't a function of the councils. They were, the land was Lands and Survey Department, and I think it was 89 that Lands and Survey was dismantled into Land Corp that took over the ownership of farming land owned by the government. And LINZ, Land Information New Zealand, that did the ownership of individual properties. And then all these domains were tossed over to the respective councils, district councils or county councils. So it's really only since '89 that most of the councils have become involved with some of these domains. And a lot of the domains that were set aside, nothing was really done about them, but a lot were. And the local people in those areas were the ones that developed the facilities within the domains or maintained them. To a large extent, I can think of 2 or 3 domain boards that do a very good job and take offence at council interfering with what they do. It's more the other way around. They don't want council to poke their nose in. And it's just as well that council doesn't, otherwise that group of people would probably throw up their hands and say, righto, it's all yours. And then it does become a cost on ratepayers. So I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all at all. As you say, there are 250 domains, and there are some right up there and some way down there. So I'm not quite sure what we do as a council, or what we should do as a council on the matter, because, as I say, it's not one-size-fits-all.
Some of them are so, you're right, Councillor Johns, some of them are so dispersed and poorly known. If I was you and the option was still there, I'd try and hand them off to QE2, but QE2 is seriously underfunded at the moment anyway, so that would never happen. But it could be an elegant solution for getting rid of some of the problem, some of the esplanade reserves and things that are landlocked by farms, for example. Yeah. Difficult.
Thanks. And we'll take one more question. Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Tracy. Great bit of work there, Mark. I think what you were alluding to, New Zealand itself suffers very badly, and I've said it many times in this room, from island mentality. everyone's got their little island and they don't want to come together. The good thing about Pongaroa, it's still together. You haven't got so much suffering island mentality out there. I was a proud member of your lodge out there until it sadly closed, but that was numbers. But my father was born out there. But the whole thing about what you're alluding to, I think you've addressed well. And if you get a chance, I'd like you to have a look at a piece of work done by Sir Peter Beck, and you all know who he is. It's called Accountability, Innovation and Battling Bureaucracy. And I suppose that sums up a lot what you've just been talking about. So we will, it's going back to Councillor Scott, what he was mentioning, the situations we've got and the times we live in, we can't go back. We can't drive along looking in our rear vision mirrors. We've got to go that way and we've got to live in the now. How we address that, that's going to be an interesting navigational course. But thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. And yes, Mr Beck is quite well known to people that live in Pongaroa.
Thanks, Mark. We've really appreciated you coming in and the thought that you do give, but also just acknowledge the work that you have done within the Pongaroa community for many, many decades. You know, and I know it's through Cyclone Gabrielle, but actually it's far beyond that. But we do thank you, and I note, I've noted down what council can do to build that relationship, and especially with the regional council, because I wasn't aware that they weren't talking to Pongaroa Way to Go when in regards to the rabbit weir, which is why I asked that. So we'll also see what we can do in that space as well, between the three of us, Pongaroa Way to Go Council and the Horizons Regional Council. So
Thank you, Mayor Tracy.
So thank you very much.
Thank you everyone for listening and staying awake.
No, and you, yeah, and I hope you've got that unicorn parked outside. Thanks. Next up, we've got the Pongaroa Domain Board to. Awesome. Welcome, Heather.
Good morning, Your Worship, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. I'm actually speaking on behalf of Gordon Almas. I'm actually a smaller, younger version of him. And I've been out, obviously based Pongaroa, caught at home for 50 years. Unfortunately, I'm having to move on shortly. But we'll get this going. The Pongaroa Domain Board has been in existence since the days of the Akatea County Council. It has always had a strong Maori presence on its committee, as a part of all communities. And our current chair, who cannot be here today to present this, is Maori. The board oversees and manages to the best of its unfunded ability to designated reserves in district, calling on its sister organisation the Way to Go for assistance as and when needed. We were contacted over 2 years ago and asked what activities the board undertook, and that is what you consider as input to the drawing up of this draft plan. We consider your proposal to, in the future, overlook groups with a track record of successful reserve management and improvement rather insulting and demeaning to these organisations, and strenuously recommend that you rethink your stated position. Just be aware, I'm speaking, this is actually written by someone else, so. We are concerned over the occupation agreements clause. There are examples of buildings built by communities on council reserve land in the past, some dating back to before the amalgamation, the building we administer on the Ponga Reserve being an example. How does the proposed policy here impact tenure? Are they considered leases? What is the situation regarding ownership and compensation in this case if council decides to reclaim the land and evict the rugby and squash clubs? Grazing leases arrangements are another concern. If it were not for our grazing, a small flock on the reserve without charge, the main board would probably be bankrupt. Domain boards are supposed to be self-funding. As there's income from our sheep and overnight camping fees barely cover the payments we must make to council for water rates, building WAF, and other council processing fees. Then there's insurance, power, maintenance, etc. to be considered. Naming rights. We believe that existing names and signage are fine, we all know and identify with them. Making any changes must be done with input from the local community at the very start and then be put out for consultation. Such signage changes will have a cost that will likely diminish the pool of funds available for actual maintenance and improvement works. And not just from my perspective there, too, obviously you're talking about from English possible to marry names. I've no problem with that, as long as these actually in English, yeah. Regarding the events of the 4 Mile Bush and the dead kahikatea tree. From my perspective, myself, I came back from overseas after 5 years away, end of the year, and when it showed a non-local around the district, went into the 4 Mile Bush, and first thing I saw was this kahikatea tree, very dead. As someone who's done a lot of living in the bush, I guess, camping out and that kind of stuff, always look up first for your camp, just in case something falls on you. And I can see a risk here, okay? So I went and saw a lady behind us actually about this as a risk in the future, because I don't know who would be liable if something fell on a freedom camper, and with the risk involved there. And that lady probably has to turn up for that incident as well. And I was told it was going to be dropped shortly. I'll come back to it in a second. Both Horizons Regional and Tararua District Councils have conducted their own investigations into this. Horizons have concluded theirs and issued warnings and fined for failing to obtain resource consent first. It seems that paperwork is more important than public safety. The board will pay this simply because we lack the resources to defend it. TDC are yet to announce their findings, and rather than solely applying a rule book, we hope that a degree of common sense and discretion here. Lessons have hopefully been learnt by both sides. There have been a hope to be able to sell the usable timber to fund need improvement work and pest plant control. We knew the legal requirements for a native timber salvage and removal permit and had commenced the application process through MPI when the log was illegally removed from site. I'll come back to that to myself personally. We fully expect the Council's investigation to identify and result in prosecution of the offenders. We also hope they will be made to pay us the estimated value of the timber as compensation, as along with the above proposed work, we now must repair the car park and driveway damaged by them during the timber's illegal removal. Now that money had been, within our immediate community, had been planned for local community, including everyone in it. I was disgusted when I heard the story that the person who removed it used to be a councillor here. Okay, and I'm also disgusted myself that the tree, no one knows where it is. Any questions? What part, man? That no one knows, seems to know the tree's gone, it's disappeared. We know who picked it up. We don't know where it's gone. No one knows. And yet apparently someone's been fined for it from their work at home for trying to do the right thing for safety. And yeah, I'd love to know that other people at South have been persecuted or prosecuted. I actually wanted to bring the police involved into it, but I was told not to. I was told, no, we're sorting it out ourselves. So I just shut up.
You're starting to steal a lot of what the hell is going to
Sorry.
say.
Sorry. Okay. Any questions?
Councillor Wards and then Councillor Chase. I'll get you to.
I know you said you're a mini Gordon, but I didn't get your first name.
Okay, sorry, I'm Malcolm Johnson.
Malcolm.
Yeah.
I knew the face, I was just trying to put the names out. Thank you, Malcolm. A, for stepping in for Gordon, but B, your very impassioned and very insightful presentation. In the submission that has come from the Domain Board, you're obviously reflecting on, I'm just trying to get a picture, this is where all the, what I call your showgrounds, isn't it? Where the rugby club is. So you have freedom camping in there as well. That's part of.
I'm not too sure about that.
There's power there that
That's paid for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the leasing arrangement, because it's reflected in here that you didn't support tidying up leases for it was only for grazing, wasn't it? Is there a lease arrangement with the Domain Board for the stock? No?
No.
No.
There's no arrangement whatsoever for those graves. They've been grazed by the domain board probably for 15, 20 years.
That's what I'm trying to, you know, as we tidy up some of this stuff, Malcolm, it's about capturing historically what has been the deal versus what we do into the future.
I spent the last 11, 12 years mostly based overseas, so I was just available. I guess,
You're in a bit of a catch-up mode, aren't you, Malcolm? So,
yeah.
so no, I appreciate that. So, very overall, though, the comment that's been made by the domain board is they do not support the current plan. Aspects of it, perhaps, but in general, it's not something that the domain board would hold their hand up and go, great job.
I can't speak for them. I'm just a spokesperson for this.
Thanks, Malcolm, for being here, though.
Oh, yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions? Councillor Long?
Yeah, thank you, Malcolm, for your presentation. The grazing lease, it's paying for maintenance and work on the domain and things like that?
I believe so, yeah.
Right. Is it also saving costs because of not having to use a mower, these sorts of things, and also fire risk in the summer by using animals?
I would have to ask our local contractor.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yes.
Some of it.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Chase?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Tracy. Thank you for your submission and standing in for the Whangaroa board.
Yeah.
I just want to know, with the tree being a bit of a hazard, was there at any time any CRM or any notification to council to let council be aware of the dangers of that
I'll
tree
refer to the
before?
next speaker for that, because
Okay,
it might be covered.
yeah.
I myself, just as someone just come overseas, as I said, been away for 5 years and noticed things had changed to a dangerous, I thought a dangerous level, and spoke straight away on the way back from there.
Yeah.
Because it was that, I thought it was pretty bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's fine. My second one I would like to ask as well, if there was an agreement with the Whangaroa board, with the council, with the having a good agreement with the grazing of the properties or reserves out there, would that actually help with the Whangaroa board in supporting possibly the reserve management?
Again,
Clean.
I'm just...
Okay, that's cool.
You unhappy?
Yeah.
I would suggest that we've been successful in doing what we've been doing without any agreements and all that, so I have no,
I guess, from our perspective, we're pretty simple. Like, if it ain't broken, don't fix it, right? And if it works, it works. So, it may not be written down somewhere or in an written agreement, but if it works in a small situation, it just works. With grazing, I'm talking about here.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of maybe, like, for future reference, that there is a paper trail for the future councillors to see that there has been a bit of a partnership with the Whangaroa board.
Even a one-page
and
document
just a
saying that...
pretty much
blah, blah,
kind of
yeah.
thing.
Okay.
Like, saying we've allowed, I don't know, that could be a possibility.
Okay,
I'm not saying that
I'll
it
pass
is.
on to the person who wrote this.
Might possibly be a possibility. Might be a possibility. Okay. Thank you.
If I may,
Well, I'll tell you what, you can come forward, because no one online can hear if you're speaking down there, and just decide whether it's after Heather's presentation. I'll ask the Chief Executive to give an update on the tree.
this won't interfere with Heather's presentation. Co-presenters, eh? It's co-everything's all the rage.
Yes, second one,
No, I actually am on the domain board, and we had to get somebody else to speak because I felt speaking on two things would be wrong. But yes, the idea of formalising the arrangement that exists between us and the council is an excellent idea, and it's a good. We haven't thought of it. Thank you. We'll follow that up. We'll write it up and get you to sign it without looking at it.
Good question, thanks, man.
Thanks for that. I've written that one down. Are there any further questions for Mark or Malcolm? Okay. Right. Heather, would you like the Chief Executive to give an update on the tree? Would you like the Chief Executive to give an update on the tree now or after your presentation?
Wait till I finish.
Okay. Yep. Okay, thanks, Heather.
Push my button. Okay, hello. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this policy, and a timely one it is. I'm Heather Monk, and I arrived in Pongaroa 56 years ago when it was still Akatea Council. Around 1980 we became Dennyvert County Council, and then we became Tararua District Council. With all the amalgamations, we were forgotten. But we, as a community, just got on with looking after things ourselves, as we always have. Today, I'm going to tell you a story about two people and one reserve. And I hope I don't offend anyone, but this is my story. 4 Mile Bush, a reserve, a place that for 20-something years I drove past every time I went out and never took much notice of it. But then, in about 2000, it was decided by the Way to Go committee to make 4 Mile Bush a freedom camping area. First off, a loo arrived on the back of a truck. It needed to go in the ground. The neighbours said, but it'll get flooded. Aha, the husband said, we'll put it on a mound. And he just did that with his digger. And it sits there today, a throne that's never been flooded. It has been an island a couple of times when the rivers got a little higher than normal. As the developments went on, we were there. When clearing old man's beard, I was crawling under the trees, cutting and pasting the stuff. When in about 2015-16, with very few people left interested in the area, a flood went through. I went down and checked, and it was a holy moly moment. It was close to being becoming an island, as the river had scoured out the bank big time. But working with Horizons and a resource consent, we were very good then. The husband's bulldozer came out, and with the help of a digger, a few days' work and a few truckloads of rocks, the bank stands intact today. Over the years, we've gone down every summer to check and clean the throne and ask the neighbour to mow if the sheep hadn't done a good enough job. Then along came Gabriel, and another bit of the bank went. This just needed a truckload of rocks and a bit of digger work. The husband once again organised it. Whilst they were there, they put in a drain to get rid of the water lying around, buried the dead sheep, and so on. We also went down with our water blaster and cleaned all the silt out of the shelter, gave the throne a good blast as well. The fences have been broken. The fences have been broken in the flood, and the cattle are getting in and now eating the regrowth and pugging the ground. The reserve has been used for school picnics. I've been to 2 weddings there, and my children have camped down there. In all this time, I have seen one council vehicle down there, in the middle of the winter, stuck up to its running boards in the mud. He thought he could turn around off the track. Guess whose tractor had to pull him out? What a mess. And again, guess who cleaned it up? This leads to the policy, and I'm only going to address a couple of items. The rest you can read in my written submission. Right. So, specimen trees. At the beginning of the summer 2024, I went down to do my usual pre-season check on the throne in the area and noticed one of the white pines in the picnic camping area was looking very sad, in fact to me dead. So I went at home and said to the husband, who had been a logging contractor, a man of many talents, "When you go past, can you check it, please?" "Yep," he reported back, "dead as a doornail." The decision was made to fell it, as it was going to be a health and safety issue. Just after that, I had a local and somebody from Auckland on my doorstep telling me that too. Right, in here I've written, read highlighted areas. The felling of the trees within a reserve will only be considered when? In my page? Trees can present public safety risks, and trees in a reserve will only be considered when necessary for proper management and maintenance, i.e. the tree has reached its end of life, in the interests of safety, persons or property near the reserve if the tree is causing or likely to cause significant damage to buildings. We have a lean-to there, to improve public safety. I now have a formal warning and the husband has a fine for just doing that. If the policy was around 2 years ago, who knows? I would like, at this stage, to point out that we have been waiting for 2 years for trees across the road from our pub to be pruned for more than 10 years. Many CRMs and still not done. Very itchy chainsaws in the village. Hence our decision. Right. Next one. 321. Read. And I've got to give me a wee bit here. Read highlighted. Council will continue to work with locally regarding future management. Only once have the Erie been involved in our bush, and that was for a blessing before the bank was repaired, and it cost us $600. Never have they shown any interest in the reserve, in helping weeding, maintenance, etc. I don't think they even knew of our existence, of our little reserve, until the tree came down. There's never been so many visitors there. But now they're looking at what's left of a dead tree, the rest having been uplifted by ? And now in somebody's shed. To conclude, last year you gave me the Civic Award. You know, we can all do stuff in an emergency, but the things that we are most proud of are things like looking after a reserve, a domain, a hall, making sure lawns are mown, rubbish picked up, and so on. And that's what we and our community do at no cost to the council. Thank you. I'm not sure whether that's a submission or a story or what, but there you are. That's me.
No. Heard that
And I
loud
hope
and
you've asked
clear.
Mark all the questions.
And I did notice you were wearing your Civic Award as well.
And I didn't put my hearing aids in, I'm sorry.
That's okay. We'll try and use the microphones and make it loud. Does anyone have any questions for Heather? Councillor Chase.
Thank you through you, Mayor Tracy. Thank you for your submission and your coming here to tell us about all the massive work that Pongaroa people do for all of us in this community. But can I just ask, was there any CRM put in
No.
for the tree?
No.
No. Okay. That's what I want to know. Thank you.
Councillor Gilmore and then Councillor Long.
Thanks very much, Mayor Tracy. Heather, Mrs. Monk, thank you very, very much for coming in and for sharing that story. And it was a story, but it was impactful all the same. So thank you. And I'm glad you mentioned your civic honour, because I wanted to acknowledge that, your name on the board directly behind you. I suppose my question, and I want to thank you for the direct work that you've done, but also for the work that the whole community has done, and your involvement in that partly is what gave you that badge that you're wearing today. You've mentioned a number of things within your submission and read those out, and I want to touch on the question that I asked Mark before, and I don't expect a full answer now, but I suppose I'm going to ask for similar consideration of Mark going away and having a bit of a think of how we can document some of your suggestions, how we can make things work for the Pongaroa community within the document that we have. Councillor Johns spoke before, and I 100% agree with him that not all domain boards are running the same way. Some domain boards would actually like council to get out of the way and let them get on with it, where perhaps council does need to take more active involvement within others. My view on it is perhaps we need to look at some ability within this document to be able to reflect the good that is already being done by those that are already doing it. So my request to you, and not to put you on the spot, Mark has undertaken to give that some more consideration. Mrs. Monk, could I ask you to do the same?
Oh, definitely. And Mark will put lots of thought into it, and we will discuss it, I'm sure. Thank you.
Councillor Long and Councillor Wards.
Through you, Mayor Tracy. Heather, thank you very much for your presentation. Could you also give a thank you to your worker, David? He seems to do a lot of work at Pongaroa.
He is always there.
I see that, yeah. And the other thing is, some time ago, I too asked if the police should have been involved in the tree, and I was told that they shouldn't be, it should be sorted out before then. So if the police were involved, would a criminal conviction be enforced in this incident?
Well, I have what do I have? You know, we were interviewed formally able to have a lawyer with us, so is that a criminal? You know, I don't know. Anyway, it's done and dusted. I hope it never happens again.
Councillor Wards.
Thank you, Worship.
Oh, shit.
That's recorded now, Mrs. Monk. Heather, thank you. I concur with some of the questions or insights that have been shared by my colleagues, but one question I have for you, because I know it will be an ongoing conversation and it's going to take a while, but how can, given what has happened, how can we at council rebuild the trust and ensure that communities wider than Pongaroa alone, where through legislation, compliance and a whole lot of those other issues that can sometimes get in the way of getting stuff done, as it were, how can we at council ensure that we do take steps with communities, especially Pongaroa, to rebuild the trusting relationship?
Well, we've got a policy that maybe could help out. I mean, let's face it, if I'd known and thought about it, we might have not gone down the track we did. But I don't know. We ourselves... Look, I'm just going to say one thing here. It has not because of me, shattered our little trust. One gentleman who has a digger in our communities, a contractor, came down the Pongaroa Pātua Road, and there's a shingle pit there just on the side of the road, and it was spilling out onto the road. He normally would have stopped and got it off the road and cleaned it up. He looked at it and says, no, I'm not going to do that. I haven't got my hivers, I haven't got my cones, I haven't got anything. Somebody will see me and get me into trouble. That is the consequences of what's happened. So there, I don't know whether that answers, and I can't answer because I'm a bit too emotional about all this, but, you know, when people who have done the job for all these years do a job that they've just done, it pisses you off, I'm sorry. I'm a daughter.
That's why I wanted you to come and tell your story, because, you know, the implications of what has happened, you know, have ripple effects, and you've just given us a really good example. People who get stuff done. Mark talked to us about a tree. I often see a post on the Pongaroa, you know, website or their Facebook saying, tree at such and such a corner, just slice through it, all good to go. And you think, that's what, you know, we need to walk that fine line between being compliant, being health and safety focused, letting the preferred suppliers get on with the job versus what we really know happens in a rural community. So a sincere thank you on behalf of all of us, Heather.
It's fine. But I'm not going to get up yet. No,
Councillor
because...
Wallace. Oh, I've got one more question.
Well, you've got more questions.
Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mayor Tracy. Great work. You haven't pinned me up against the wall. But anyhow, yeah, I know what you're saying, but there is good news on the horizon about the road cones. The New Zealand is changing. And going back to what Mark was saying, you know, we're battling bureaucracy. We're living in a state we've never seen before. But there is change amidst us. So keep up the good work, and we will fight the good battle.
Thank you. I'll get up and sit down again.
Right. So welcome, Heather, from Pongaroa Way to Go.
And sorry, it is me again. I'm here, so you get two for the price of one. I have agreed to present the submission for the Way to Go committee, a committee that I am a foundation member of. I had very little input into this submission, other than to answer the historic stuff. But I endorse everything that they have written. So bear with me as I read this for them. Right. We were never approached for our input to this draft plan till it was released for consultation. We would have thought input from those who already manage and maintain some of your reserves and a commitment to continue to work with and prioritise their input should have been the core of this policy's development and ultimate implementation. We believe consultation regarding the development of reserves or renaming them must be mandatory. Place greatest emphasis on the opinions and views of the community and the groups in the immediate area, as they are the ones living there and are the most knowledgeable and engaged in the space. Also, for consideration of naming reserves should always be done in consultation with the local community, domain boards or committees. As it is, we consider this section poorly worded. The reference to arbitrarily changing names without notice we find particularly concerning. Any consideration for naming must be discussed with the community directly affected and have their support before any change is contemplated. A reserve's existing name has cultural value to the local community. We agree a second name could be added as long as the common usage one retains priority. New signage comes at a cost. That probably comes from operations budget. So what work will need to be sacrificed for some new signs? Why, may we ask, is there no mention of weed or pest control in the strategy? It is a major issue affecting the survival of our bush reserves. We are fighting a constant battle of old man's beard, wandering dew. Oh, actually, that's not supposed to be in there, that name. Ivy, stinking iris, Jerusalem cherry, just to name a few. Recent events in the former bush have been well touched on. Yes, they have. Both Horizons Regional and Tararua District Council have conducted their own investigations into this. Horizons have concluded theirs, with TDC yet to final its. This event highlights a real breakdown in communication from both sides. We hope that steps are taken to rebuild a relationship that has been badly damaged by the way this matter has been handled. For your information, this is a list of some of the works we've carried out over the years and continue to do in our spaces using volunteer labour and funds drawn from the now disbanded Main Street funding program. In brackets, the reserves are actually yours, but usually don't seem to attract any of your attention. Perhaps we do too good a job. For my bush, construction of plus upgrades and maintenance of the picnic area and shelters. Installing a composting toilet. Well, actually, it's more a long drop one. It has a big tank underneath it, so, you know, that's why it's on a that's why it's up. Anyway, I'm prattling. Installation of a rock wall to prevent the reserve being eroded by the river. Recovery of stuck vehicles. Metling of parking area and driveway. Ongoing work to remove old man's beard from the reserve area, plus various public safety improvements. The bushwalk. In the village, we call it the bushwalk. It's up the cemetery road. Development and maintenance of a metal track network, undertaking drainage work, erection of signage and track markers. We built a picnic table and undertake repairs to the boundary fence to prevent stock entering the bush. That's completely down now, so we have to address that. We do pest control and a lot more. Centennial Arch and grounds, we made repairs to and repainted the Centennial Arch, removed weeds and undergrowth, repaired the pathways. Pongarore Reserve Camping Area, in conjunction with the Domain Board, we developed the parking area, installed power points and an ablution block for motorhomes and other campers, and removed a row of pines threatening to fall over the camping area. We maintain this to this day. We never got told off for moving those, did we? Pongarore Community Hall. In the main hall, we paid for tables, sound system, new curtains. We equipped the kitchen with dishwasher, stove, fridge, hob, range hood, plus cups, plates, glasses, cutlery. We removed the school playground from Turramia and installed half behind the hall with the other half on the village and made them code compliant. So you can see the current system works when people are engaged, motivated, and want to make a difference. We would like to see you focus on greater engagement and support for existing volunteer groups that currently undertake work on your behalf, rather than hope that some new arrangement will work as well or better. We endorse a previous speaker's suggestion of funding for domains and reserved in a manner of the Main Street funding that has worked successfully for us. The task is far too big for council to undertake without the assistance from the entire community, a community which in our little corner of the world feels badly let down and ignored at the moment. Thank you. Gosh, you people, Pongarora's put up a fight today, isn't it? Or some words. Carry on.
Thanks, Heather. Does anyone have any further questions? Councillor Gilmore.
Have you run out by now?
Thanks very much, Mayor Tracy. Heather, thanks again for another great presentation. The only quick question that I have here, and I'm really keen for your insight in it, because it actually runs through, I think, a number of the other comments we've heard from other presentations. You were talking specifically about greater engagement. There's been some discussion about the development of this plan, but I think potentially that goes further. The greater engagement between council, between Pongaroa Way to Go, or between the Domain Board. Ideally, what would that look like for you? So, you've been involved in every group in the Pongaroa community, to be fair. So you know what good engagement looks like, and perhaps you know what ineffective engagement looks like. What would your advice be to council on the best way to engage the Pongaroa community?
I have no idea, but I would say that at the moment, Councillor Ward does a very good job of engaging with us, and we don't mind telling her a thing or two. So, maybe our good relationship should hopefully carry on there, but Mark's got more sensible ideas than me. But yeah, I think, Mark, have you gone to sleep back there?
No, I haven't gone to sleep, I haven't.
But I think we've said things 4 times over today for you, so thank you very much. But we'll tend and talk now.
Yep. Team tag. On that, communications both ways. Myself, until I've started to get contacts with certain people in council, ringing up to speak to someone on a particular issue or whatever it is, there's a deny, defer, deflect arrangement. We can't give you their name for privacy reasons or whatever it is. If they put you through to a telephone, it goes to voicemail. I have sent, I've got 3 emails that I've sent to various people inside the organisation over the last 2 weeks. I've had no answers to. Sometimes, I guess because we're well-meaning busybodies and largely retired, we work on the principle, do it now. An example of this, here's the tree again. The day before the decision was made to cut it down, a camper in the Huranui district was nearly killed by a tree in a reserve that fell on top of him. And that was part of the reason behind our thinking. Do it now, because there are people using the reserve over this period of time. Putting a CRM or an antenna thing in on the weekend is a waste of time, because no one looks at them all the way through. Now, I know with the likes of Peter Sinclair, if I need to get in touch with him in the CD group, Civil Defence Group, they have a system that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's no similar one for emergency works, because in most cases things can probably wait until Monday. But we're impulsive. We see that there's something that needs to be done. We have the means, motive and the equipment to do it, and we do it.
And the expertise.
And the expertise. So, yeah, if we communicate with you, we need to know the people that we're, that are the go-tos, and expect reasonable, not pick up the phone straight away, although Pete has some amazing managers to do that, but, timely, 24 hours is a turnaround. Put that as a KPI.
Councillor Sutherland, then Councillor Long. Oh, okay. Sorry, Councillor Long.
Through you, Mayor Tracy. Heather, thank you very much for your presentation. I had no idea the amount of work that is done out there by volunteers and good people. On another note, I was in Australia recently and at a park, and with a car park and gum trees everywhere, and my wife and I heard a crack and we knew something was happening, and a branch came down right next to the car park where 2 children and 2 adults were getting into a vehicle, and that child was 2 to 3 metres away from being killed by a branch of a tree.
This is a big tree, it's not a...
Thank you for your presentation today. Thank you.
Councillor Sutherland.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. Thanks, Mark, Heather and Malcolm. I was just really more of a comment. It's, after reading the submissions, this reserve management plan is not something we've just sort of decided to dream up and brown everybody off. We're required to have one by legislation, this lovely legislation again, and we have to have one. So we decided we'd make one plan to cover our 270 or 80 reserves or whatever that we mentioned before. And that one plan is what we've arrived at. And we have had some positive responses, that it was logical and it was reasonable and it's about time. Councillor Peter made the comment that one size does not fit all. A number of reserves have said, get out of our way and don't come back. The view you're taking is that, you turn up now after we've done a lot of work for 20 years, which is quite true. But I'm like Councillor Steve, I think we have to move on. I'm not mentioning trees, one little bit of trees, but we do need to move on. And I think we've had a lot of consultation this year, a number of new policies and bylaws. And out of those bylaws, there was some, someone mentioned, you mentioned we should have consulted directly, but out of those bylaws we have made, out of those consultation processes, we've changed a lot of our bylaws. And it's been quite a positive process actually, and I treat this as the same. We've come up with a reserve management plan and we've had some really good impact, and it's very close to the heart of Pongaroa, which I say great. So I think moving on, it's that we'll be focused on this, and let's hope we get the job done right for the different reserves. And there's a very different approach from some of the reserves for certain. A number of the responses that have come in from your area were, let's say, somewhat critical about iwi or Maori in participation of Pongaroa, but sort of under the Conservation Act, we are required to include in our plans in participation or partnership with Maori. But I was quite comforted. The iwi perhaps have not had much to do with, perhaps not for a long time, as commented by you, but under the first or second clauses of our plan, it does give us the opportunity to consult, to discuss with Maori, with iwi and different parties, a new approach going forward. So to me, it may not be that they want to be involved with Pongaroa, with the 4 Mile Bush or something, but it does. I think it opens the door to have some consultation, or let's be positive about that. So we're stuck with it, whether we like it or not. And I think it might be a good opportunity to refocus on how you see us delivering services to you. Other domain boards have asked us not to come near them, but Yeah, so I really want to make the point, it's not something we decided to have because we wanted to do it. But it's certainly got a bit of activity in the consultation process, so.
I agree with going forward, but I hope we learn from what's happened so that we go forward in the right way. So, thank you. Have you finished, Mark? Yep. And just thank you for listening to Pongaroa today. Thank you.
That's fine. What I'm going to do is, and I do thank you all for coming in, but if I can just adjourn for 5 minutes, just for some facilities break, and then I'm going to ask when we come back, the Chief Executive will give you an update on the tree, and then I just want to talk a little bit around the communication and where we can go from there, because I know Councillor Wards, has done a fantastic job and attends those meetings. What more could we do in that space as well? So, but I do want the Chief Executive to give you a bit of an update on that. But if you could just give me 5, if that's okay. Thank you. Right, we'll just adjourn. Okay, thanks. Brian will just give us an update on the trees that you've got there before you go.
Thank you, Mayor Tracy, and welcome Heather and Mark. So just regarding the tree in terms of council's involvement with it, so council did receive a formal complaint regarding the cutting down of the kahikatea tree. Council is obligated by law to investigate any complaints we receive, and the cutting down of the tree did fall under the Reserves Act, which we are then obligated to look into. During the process and at the start, we became aware that Horizons Regional Council were also received a complaint and started their own investigation. At that point, I personally did contact Horizons and said to them, please keep us involved, let's work collaboratively together so we're not putting any undue pressure on those people that need to be spoken with. I was speaking to a senior manager and I was given assurance that that would happen. A week or two later, through Councillor Wards, I was notified that a Horizons compliance investigator turned up in Pongaroa, and Heather, yourself and someone else was interviewed under caution. Upon hearing that news, I got straight back on the phone and spoke to that same manager and shared my extreme disappointment that that occurred without our knowledge and without us being involved in it, so we could have worked together on it and collaborated our efforts. At that point, I also made a decision that council will stop its investigation pending the investigation through Horizons, because obviously they were investigating through the One Plan connected to the RMA. And that sort of, we took a back seat to that for the very reason that we didn't want to also come and talk to you about the same matter and go through the same process. At that point, Horizons continued the investigation, and we understand, as you mentioned today, that you received a fine and warning. From council's perspective, we could have continued this under the Reserves Management Act and looked at a various range of options as well. However, council made a decision that whatever Horizons have done, that would be it from an enforcement perspective. Council will, to end our investigation, would also have to provide a warning based on the fact that there was a breach within the Reserves Act. But once again, we can make a decision around what we do based on a lot of other factors as well. So we've gone through all of those other factors in terms of the intent was never there to break an act. We understand that. There's also all the goodwill that has been provided within the community regarding that area, and that helps us make a decision around a final outcome. I understand a letter has been sent out. Not too sure if you've received it, but certainly has gone, I think, on the 30th of June. So from council's perspective, our matter's concluded regarding it, but just to note that there was never an intention for us to work in silos with Horizons. Our intention, and through myself, and I've spoken with the Chief Executive on this matter as well, so that can work better into the future. But council is a regulatory agency as well, and we must follow the laws that we've put into. I also understand there's a policy there, but the Reserve Act is the number one piece of legislation that governs the reserves. It's not a police matter. In terms of where the tree is, we do know where the part of the tree has been taken. We've been notified of that, and from here we're now just working through what do we do with the remains of the tree. So from an officer's perspective anyway, our hands are quite tied when we go through these processes, and we did in the end decide that Horizons, as they had pushed through with it, that we would just take it backward steps from there. And just quickly, we do have emergency call out 24/7. So in terms of anything dangerous on roads or parks or anywhere else, we do have people on call.
Thank you, Brian. So, acknowledge what you say. Yes, in hindsight, we realise there is a raft of regulations and things like that. However, we are left with about a $3,500 mess to clean up after the timber was taken away. Is council going to pay the bill? We can't afford to.
For what, sorry, Mark?
For the damage that was done to the parking area and the driveway when the timber was uplifted. When the logs from the tree were uplifted in February. You were notified, photographs were sent to council. We have provided a tremendous amount of information. No one, or I may be wrong here, no one from council talked to me. I think possibly Heather was visited and some photographs were taken by one of the Parks and Reserve staff, but that is the only contact that we've had. A couple of phone calls to you, numerous emails, no responses.
So, just let me be clear here. Council's done nothing wrong in terms of this incident, in terms of the approach that we take from an enforcement agency. We didn't drive there and pick up the tree and take it away, and we did not give permission for the tree to be cut down as an authority agency. So council hasn't committed anything here. If we were technically to go by the letter of the law, offences have been committed. We've tried to work through this to get to a good outcome for those that are involved. The tracks and everything else, that can be another matter that we deal with in terms of those that remove the tree, but there certainly won't be any commitment from council to pay damage through an illegal activity that took place on that land at the time.
The illegal activity.
By the letter of the law, yes, it is.
I accept that.
Yes.
The damage done was not done by us. It was in the uplifting of the logs. I can assure you it'll never happen again. And as I say, if we'd known about policies, but we have never run by policies. We've run by community stuff we've just done. So if I have to apologise, I apologise, but I don't want to because we've just done what we've always done. And if it was illegal or a mistake, well, so be it. We will learn from it. And I hope everybody learns from that.
And sorry, I totally agree. I think there can be a lot of learnings from this. And one of the takeaways from us is those that do look after those, some of the reserves and stuff, you're not aware of the legislation that sits behind that. So how can council share with what sits behind that so this doesn't happen in the future? And one call and maybe this may have not happened. So we're certainly looking at what we can do to help the domain boards and the likes to be successful. Legislation changes around us. Things have changed, unfortunately. Legally, domain boards don't exist either in a legal sense. Domain boards from a legal sense no longer exist.
So what is a domain board now?
It is a community group that supports a reserve. You can still have community groups.
So you have to change your name to?
You don't have to. You can still call it a domain board.
Domain committee?
Domain boards previously had a lot of, you could have been the administering unit, all of that. That's all been taken away when legislation has changed over time. Not by local government, by central government.
No, I can understand where you're coming from there, Brian, and the communication thing, as I alluded to earlier, it's the chain of command or contact with people, because we've largely been left on our own, to our own devices, because we do stuff and don't bother council, that chain of communication hasn't been set up. And that comes back to what Councillor Gilmore's asked Heather and myself to do, how we can come to an engagement. I agree with that, but it still doesn't address the fact that we now have a bloody mess to tidy up.
Not of our making.
So let's work together on that and see what we can do together to come to a solution. And I think looking forward, we've talked about better communication, better processes, everything like that. Unfortunately, things like this may happen again in terms of, but if we can tidy up some of those expectations around what the expectations from councils are and vice versa, I think there can be a way forward here. So I will ask Fontaine, who's in the room today, to work with the domain board or whoever you like to look at some solutions to tidying that up.
Thank you. It is just, you will appreciate our frustration. It is us that have been censured and fined, and it is galling to think that the perpetrators that moved the log will get away with this scot-free.
I have to add here that the fine has been paid by the community, not by us. They stepped up, and it was only a smallish fine, a slap on the wrist, but the community paid it as a matter of principle. But anyway, we've had enough time, I'm sure, talking about a tree, but I hope we all learn for the future is my... Have fun with your policies, my goodness.
The past is the past, thank you. You know, it's a learning exercise. Looking back over your shoulder is only useful for shaping how you go forward, nothing else. Thank you for listening to us today.
Thanks very, very much for coming in and for everything that you do. When you get that letter through, if I could just ask you to feedback through Councillor Woods and just give some more, feedback on that communication loop, would be helpful. Thanks. Right, councillors, back to the paper on page 3. So the recommendation is there. Council staff are seeking some direction on matters to be considered at the council meeting at the end of July. I've written a few things down, but do people want to... Are there any specifics that you've got? I've written some more information around community partnerships with locals and councils, how that might work. Some information on naming rights and buildings, what consultation might look like on renaming of reserves, budgets, and as part of the annual plan, formal partnership agreements, Main Street funding, and that was just on those ones, and I have got some on the other consultation. Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks very much, Mayor Tracy. The other thing that I'd be really keen for staff to look on and give some advice on is how we can ensure that there's some flexibility within the plan, and that we don't unintentionally force a complete one-size-fits-all approach, knowing that we may have some domain boards that are operating differently, so the ability to have some flexibility and autonomy with them. My concern is we may accidentally pass something that would require staff to treat everyone exactly the same. So just whether there's some provision in there that would be, I would like some advice on how that might work. Thank you.
Councillor Johns.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Tracy. I concur with Councillor Gilmore's comments in that regard. It's a real danger, I think, in trying to develop a policy that covers every set of circumstances, and it'll end up being non-workable, or will end up with it costing ratepayers a whole lot more money, because those that are currently doing it for love and for the sake of their own particular district will just back out.
Thank you. Councillor Woods.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. A couple of other notes that you've picked up on. Weed and pest control was missing out of the plan. Okay. And given that Pongaroa Way to Go and Mark are going away to phrase up some other thoughts and or criteria that we'd asked them for. What would be the time frame on officers taking our direction and then feeding it in? Because they'll need to work to that, won't they?
So the council meeting's on the 30th of July, but
Yeah, I
you'd need
saw
a week
that, but-
prior to that, when you're getting that agenda ready. I guess my concern with that is they haven't received the letter in which some of that some further thought might
I'm not,
form from.
with respect, I'm not sure the letter around the tree will change some of what I think Mark and Heather have in mind that they need to go away around and talk about, come up something with around formalised engagement going forward and or community consultation. The other thing, Your Worship, that before we go to a motion, I do have a couple of broader questions around iwi. I was disappointed there wasn't a submission on anything from either iwi in this, and I want to ask the question of officers: has there been the opportunity given to both iwi in a different way to reflect on the content of this plan?
No, I had the same question written down. Fontaine, have you got?
I'm just mindful that
And I guess
page 6 of our plan and page 13 were quite explicit around our partnership with iwi and ensuring that they've reflected on this.
So iwi have been part of the development of the RMP. I can't speak for the first consultation that was done because I wasn't part of the team then, but during the second consultation and development of the final draft, we did that in consultation with both our iwi partners, hence why they haven't probably put in a submission. So all of that was worked through with them. The next steps that we discussed were that we would need them to collaborate with them on is our toolkit for managing the RMP moving forward after adoption.
Through you, me, Tracy, just in terms of the pest and weed control, so it may be as simple as having a reference in the document to the Horizons 1 plan or their plan that they look at overseeing those as well, obviously because it sits as their responsibility as well, so that could happen reasonably quickly too. Yeah.
Councillor Petty-Weber?
I was just reading through my notes, me, Tracy, because we haven't read, no one covered freed and camping, unfortunately. Oh, you are going to go to that? Okay, cool, I'll leave it. All I was just going to say is some of the ones I was reading is one person really pointed out about enforcing the freed and camping rules, and they thought that was quite important, and I thought that was an important point as well, along with a lot of other bits, but that was one main one. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I've written, I'd asked if we can be clear on what enforcement might look like as well. It did come up a lot. Councillor Long?
Through you, Mayor, and also the funding for that enforcement. And there was more than one, I thought there was more than one person enforcing these rules, yeah. Sorry, Brian jumped ahead of me. Exactly right. For me, this is a Horizons, the weed and pest. They have policies in place, and again, there's funding requirement for that as well. So it looks like it hasn't been happening previous to now. Thank you.
Councillor Sutherland?
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. The page 5, which was the 1.3.1, which I mentioned I couldn't remember, that the last clause of that makes a comment they'll continue to work with both iwi regarding how they'll be engaged in future development, which is fine, and I think I mentioned that. But I think where Pongaroa team have got quite strong is the later parts of this policy, which is where am I? Just hang on. I think it's strategic. The policy part. Oh yes, right. I think probably is when we get to the policy sections, which are down in page 12 and 13. That really throws it across. That I can see where the Pongaroa people have probably got a bit antsy about that. That really says that the iwi, it's really going to give iwi some powers to develop how those reserves will be managed, identify, and the planning. Quite strong and quite specific. So I'll just leave my comments there, but I can see that's probably the section that's got most of the submissions from the Pongaroa with a definite no to the mana whenua development, but those are quite strong. That policy section is quite strong. Actually, I was just going to, the part I was really mentioning was probably two, where it identify ways to give effect to the partnership on the planning and management of reserves. And I think that's probably where it's got the backs up a little bit of Pongaroa. I think it's with the policies from the Conservation Act and the Reserves Acts have come through in here, but not sure what's the easy way out of this, but anyway, I've just thought I'll make comment about that.
Councillor Wards, you might cover what I'm going to...
Yeah, no, sorry, Mayor Tracy. Before we accept a motion or move to, I'm just curious to understand what direction, given that, the submitter hasn't come in from Akatio, but we received a lot of written submissions. And I'm curious to understand if we are being required to give direction to officers around what we think might need to be changed in the freedom camping bylaw. I mean, our silence is deafening, and I'm slightly concerned about that. So just curious, do we discuss this now or do we wait for a paper? Because some of the issues that were highlighted throughout all of those submissions around freedom camping, and in particular the Akatio submitter, there were some very strong views that I'm not sure if I was an officer sitting there going, well, what am I supposed to do with this? Because we haven't said anything as yet. Is this the time to say it, or the eyebrows going up?
Yeah, I've written down both Akatio and Herbertville because there was a lot of submissions there, and I guess for me, the question I'm asking is what are the unintended consequences? I think we need to dig into both the coastal communities differently because they have got different issues with, facilities with, both of them have space issues, there's dog issues, fire issues, water issues, so I think they are very different communities, and I think we need to understand what those unintended consequences are. So I was kind of looking forward to hearing from some of those, but hoping you might have had a little bit of insight there as well. So I think we just need to be very cautious around the coastal communities.
I'm happy to speak to it, Mayor Tracy, because when it comes to a vote at the council meeting, I will have to declare my conflict of interest. But I think some of the, if you allow me, some of the issues that were made very clear, and I'm glad you reflected on Herbertville as well, because it is a different scenario in the peak of summer, holiday time, beautiful weather, the sea is there, and everyone wants to take a break and put up their tent and go for it. The implications that have come through from a number of those submitters have reflected on, and I'll just reflect on the foreshore. It would have been nice to have had the camp owner here to indicate their views on when they see everyone camping down on the foreshore and not with them what the consequences might be. But I think what I got from those submissions was concern expressed about the length of stay. I think we have to decide very clearly if they're in a tent, how long do they stay, and when they've gone past that, who's doing the enforcement. I think you've touched on that already, Mayor Tracy. It's length of stay, and if those of you are familiar with the Akatio foreshore, there is this furniture that we refer to in our reserves management plan where there are barbecue tables and a community barbecue. And when people come along to camp and those are blocked off for use by members of the public, that's when things get a little bit nasty. So there is a couple of submissions. I know in Colleen's, who I was hoping she would speak to, had reflected on that area opposite the fire station, and that's where the community barbecue is. And in the last few summers, as I've already mentioned, families tend to park up there, put their tents around and or any structures like their cars and or their vans, and it's not able to be used. So there were some little signals across some of those submissions that I think are worthy, as you are suggesting, Mayor Tracy. We treat them with a little bit more understanding than perhaps writing a blanket rule for all. So thanks for letting me speak, but I was hoping that that would have been captured.
Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Tracy. Mayor Collis, Mayor Tracy. Oh, yeah, sorry, first name. Yeah, it is a bit of a conundrum, isn't it, really? Because we live, and we're very blessed in this way, we live in an island nation, and it's surrounded by sea. And people need that mental release, and they go to the beach. Some people are fortunate enough to have everything. Some people aren't, but they have got a tent. They have got this and they have got that. And logic always tells you you're not going to walk too far. Hence what the Councillor Woods was just talking about. I think the problem we've got to look at, in my opinion, is the way we manage it. Now, the timing, that's the big one, isn't it? Who's going to be the fun police and go out there and say, oi? And this is what this is about, putting the bylaw in place. And that's where I strongly think that these two different places, and you could probably say it to other reserves come into play too, you know. It's a very case-by-case situation. We have to look here, and I think we're not at that point yet where we can really decide with a blanket. That's my opinion. Thank you, Mayor Tracy.
Thanks. And I did note in the submission also, both those communities don't have easy access to police, which has been raised a few times. Councillor Johns.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. Yeah, I gave a fair bit of thought to this, and I'm not quite sure what the answer is, but with regard to your comment about the barbecue and table and so on for public use, there are probably other ways to mitigate against what happens currently, e.g. whacking some bollards around it, stop vehicles getting up there or whatever. But I'm sure if we had a good look at it, or staff had a good look at it, there are ways to mitigate that issue.
Councillor Sutherland, and then Brian does have one suggestion for that one.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. There was two or three things. There was a number of things. You know, a number of people are wanting us to be relaxed and allow freedom camping. Yeah, the more relaxed we are, the better. And I'm in that space a little bit. And then we focus on the locals at both beaches who don't want to be that way. There's concerns, and I have some personal experience with that because I've been sort of fishing and diving at Tararua for decades, and that's been a long-standing issue there. It's been successful and it's been unsuccessful at times, and so it'd be interesting. I'm not quite sure where CHB sits with that at the moment, but Tararua Beach has certainly been one that this has been a major issue, and the supply of water and the supply of sanitary conditions has been an issue there too. But the other thing, and I think I'm right, there were some concerns about wasn't it the distance from town or the speeds limiting what they're going to, quite a few people. Yep. And I just noticed Dannyville, there's a lot of freedom camping, if that's the term, at the RSA or the Citizens Club, a couple of the council car parks. There's other areas where it's quite common now. Now, I think the plan as we've got it precludes that or stops that, doesn't it? I think, So there's no difficulty about people parking on our car parks and say the RSA car park. They could park, and the school, the other one is our yard opposite the old fire station. That has campers there at times. Those are all okay.
Doesn't speak to it.
Yeah, and they're self-contained, those ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
they
did
can
note
park
there
anywhere
was-
as long as it's not on the road.
Yeah.
It's the 1570 kilometre roads.
I didn't have that open, so I just
I
tried to.
think council property was mentioned. You can't park in council property as a overnight camping. There was the issue with the next to the eyesight, that long-term.
Public car park. Well, get the chart. I noticed they have moved, but yeah, it is a public car park.
Hi, so there were quite a few questions going around. So if I could just go back to the car park thing, 41 Denmark Street here, the Town Hall car park, 43 Vogel Street, which is next to the eyesight, and the Town Hall car park at 9 Kiwi Street in Pakeatua are currently in Schedule 2 of the draft bylaw as having, for non-self-contained vehicles, a maximum of 1 night stay in a 7-day period, and for self-contained vehicles, a maximum of 3 consecutive nights in a 7-day period. Sorry, I think Kerry had something too. I was just trying to keep up.
Yeah, the obviously, without the big elephant in the room is enforcement of all this, of course, same as the reserves. But in Dannyvirk town, the other thing, because I'm wandering around the streets and driving around, there's probably at any day of the week would be 2 or 3 at least camper vans parked outside. I know one that are parked outside people's friends of theirs. So there is quite a bit of a casual parking in the street for self-contained units. So obviously Tier 3 town, meet their mates, camp there. This does stop that, actually. There's no allowance for that, is there, in this plan at all? Do we want an allowance? I'm not sure, but I just make the comment. I could take you to any day of the week there'd be one in the town. So do we worry about that? Perhaps not. But,
So I guess when we come to deliberations, that will be one of the clauses that you will determine whether you want it in the bylaw or not, whether or not to prohibit freedom camping in 50 and 70k zones, speed zones. The traffic and road use bylaw covers heavy vehicles not parking, so we were often thinking about logging trucks in that situation, but the weight thing will include some larger kind of RVs. And yes, somebody else said that there are actually, with the car parks in the main towns, and many of the either camping ground facilities, which are not covered by the bylaw, or places like Matthews Park or Anzac Park or whatever, are all relatively close to towns. So this information will be in the deliberations report about just all the factors to consider when you decide on whether to include that clause about the no parking in 50, 70k zones.
Thanks. Brian's just got one suggestion to put forward, and Carter is also online.
Thank you, Bishop. So I think what we're hearing is some direction in terms of what we can present to you for when we present the next report, and where we can summarise some of the suggestions that have been put through. And I know there were some good suggestions put through. And especially the lady that was going to, and then that provides some options for you to come with an outcome in terms of that. So we can go away and do some work on that, and you might leave status quo, or it might be some other subtle changes, which you can do as part of that. We can do some work on that to present that at the next meeting. I understand it's going to be difficult if everyone's got 12 little suggestions on this bit and that to sort of present all of those. So we might just try and summarise all those suggestions that have come for you so you can actually see 4 said this, 3 said this, and it might just make your decision easier when you come to make the decision.
Tracy, I think the submission from the NZ Motor Campers Association had some really, really good points about those specifics. And I think rather than sit here debating one-offs, as you said, Brian, all day, they did have 1 or 2 quite good ideas, that submission. So, yeah.
That would be good. And just before we go to the recommendation, there was one late submission that has been given to us. I'll just read it. Dear Tararua District Councillors, I have made a submission in relation to the Tararua District Reserve Management Plan, and as I won't be available to speak directly to you on the 10th of July, I have taken this opportunity to explain my position in written form. It shouldn't take more than 5 minutes to read, and therefore shall not exceed my allotted 10 minutes. I read the Services Delivery Review and came away with some misgivings. The future of our parks, reserves and domains seems to be on the cusp of a change of direction, and I don't agree with many of the suggestions or recommendations implied in the aforementioned document. It seems that our traditional recreational spaces are to be pruned for financial reasons, and control of them will evaporate into other entities. This is a plea for the Council to wrest back control of these spaces, front up to the lawn mowing and maintenance required, and if the spaces are in the control of a domain board, bring them under closer control of a designated councillor. As you are aware, I have been a member of the Pahiatua Carnival Park Board of Management since 1992, when the present format was set up. We have been dedicated to our role as guardians of the People's Park and have worked tirelessly in all fields. This includes actual physical work, weeding, pruning, fencing, arborist duties, clearing branches, hours of voluntary labour. A lot of this work has been done within the reserve itself, even since 1989, and the reserve has been in the control of DOC. Prior to 1992, Stan Walland and I were on the Domain Board with other committed members who volunteered their time to keep the domain and the reserve ticking over. In 1966, in my case, as scores of children can attest, they too put in the physical hard yards to clean up an infestation of old man's beard back in the 1970s, and have worked on weed control enhancement from that time to the present day. The Domain Board has been in operation and has been comprised of a core of local residents of Pahiatua since 1914. Scant records remain, but there have been pleas for more money from the PCC over the years. It has been, and still is as far as I'm aware, an autonomous body, depending on the overriding financial and legal jurisdiction of TDC. TDC has been very supportive. This is in no way a criticism of the support, both financial and feedback, we have received from TDC, but rather a plea for the survival of the Domain Board. The operation of the Domain Board has ensured that there is free access for all. The camping aspect is very popular, self-sustaining, and is in a healthy financial position, allowing us to follow through with the plans to update the children's playground. This has allowed us to distribute funds to continue with the weed control in the reserve. Bearing in mind the funds pay wages of the weeder for the ultimate benefit of the Department of Conservation. Because of the domain's popularity, we have been able to fund improvements for the picnicking public, have had grants from other organisations for enhancement, electric barbecue, seating, drinking fountain, a walkway so people can gain direct access to the reserve. The community has entrusted us with beneficence. As well as TDC, through the years, has ensured that we have had the funds to keep the camping area as a welcoming, functional and cheaper place to stay, while visitors have enjoyed the tranquility of both the domain and the reserve. Our biggest venture was managing the building of the modern custodian's house during the early 2000s. The substantial grant from TDC has been and is currently being used to upgrade facilities for the camping ground amenities. Our present custodians deserve special mention. The Domain Board gets positive feedback from many people because of the ambience, the neatness and the cleanliness of the amenities and surroundings. Any future plan which would annex off the domain from the general public would be a retrograde step in my opinion. One size does not fit all, nor does somehow putting the Domain Board under the auspices of Explore Pahiatua help the cause. Answering to Explore Pahiatua for elections guidance through this year seems to be an ad hoc decision and not conveyed officially to the Pahiatua Park Board of Management. I realise Treasure Carnival Park is a subgroup of EPI, but this is not the Domain Board. Over the last few years, we have been seeing a revolving door of personnel and conflicting ideas in this area of parks and reserves. Perhaps it's time for a reset. The person appointed to the supervisory role from TDC also presents at meetings of organisations. Residents, ratepayers are notified in an easy to understand format that there are several opportunities for people to voice their opinions, not presented with a fait accompli and having to rebut that situation. Local democracy should be at the forefront. We should not dismiss the contributions of volunteers, individuals and groups who have maintained and improved these facilities. I know the residents of Pahiatua care and value the parks and reserves in this area, and this has prompted me to write an explanation to cover my submission. I hope that questions may arise from this epistle. Even some recommendations would be helpful. So I think in reading that, she's made some good comments that could actually switch into Pongaroa. Sorry, Judy Gleeson? Yeah. No, Judy Gleeson. But if you could take back, I think, to Explore Pahiatua, the comments around the election, that would be good. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't have one, but we will get one. I've only got a paper copy at this stage, but just to reflect on that, is there anything else there that people picked up before we move into the recommendation? Councillor Long?
I just have a query. So we've got that comment there. We've had the Pongaroa and we've had the Mangatora Reserve, 3 reserves that people are passionate about. We've got 250 parcels of land. We're not going to work on 250. Do we concentrate on these 3 or 5 or 10 and leave the other ones aside? Or physically, financially, we don't have the restraints for 250. Do we look at divesting of some of them? QE2?
Yeah, that's a very different matter to the reserve plan that we are undertaking at the moment. So, yeah, any divesting or anything like that has to go through a separate process. Yeah. Okay.
Through me, Tracy. So I think the plan generally gives more of an overview in terms of the management of it, the future investment and the future ways of, creating some relationships. The team can certainly look at the top 3 or 4. I think they'll be good annual plan discussions for you guys next year to look into that in a little bit more detail. I think it could even go back to the work Councillor Irina mentioned it earlier around the original funding that was provided. Some work had started around that. Some of that could be brought back, I think, for the annual plan. That would cover exactly what you just said.
Simon, in the recommendation we've got 1.1 and 1.2. Have you captured the comments that we've read, or how would you like to? Oh, Brian's got one more.
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. Sorry, I just rang off and just clarified a couple of things with Ali. So deliberations will be the next stage as well. So correct. As I mentioned before, a lot of this information will be summarised for your benefit to be able to put a bit more sense around it. In terms of direction, was there anything sort of outside of what's been provided, which I haven't heard? So it's pretty much contained with the submissions and what we bring back to you next week. Not next week. Next or end of the month. Thank you.
So we've got the recommendation 1.1 and then 1.2 lists the direction as follows. Do you want to just run to abbreviate what you've got there?
Yeah, if you could go through it.
You want me to go through it? As discussed. Because actually I've got half on my sheet and I was hoping that you'd captured some.
Just
sorry.
As discussion.
Yeah. Yeah. Formal partnership agreements. Okay, I'll rip this page out for you. Okay, can I have somebody move that motion be received? Move Councillor Johns, seconded Councillor Wards. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. And I think this has been a huge piece of work, and especially in the reserves management. That's why it has never been done before. It is always tough stuff. So thank you very, very much for the enormous amount of work that's gone in there and for the freedom camping as well. So certainly a lot of submissions to consider. Look forward to seeing just those broken down as well. Thank you. Right. And with that, we'll close our meeting for lunch. Let the winds of the Ruahine and Tararua give you strength. Let the waters of the Manawatu nourish you, for we are the pounamu of Te Tāpiri Nui o Whātonga. Kia ora.